Alright guys, we're here with the PGL Masters Bucharest group stage recap. Just letting you guys know up front, it's been a very long day to get this video done, so I'm coming to you guys zoinked out of my fucking mind, but we're going to keep things together. The big thing coming into this tournament was the overall weaker field, left teams like Team Liquid, Aurora, Legacy, 3D Max at the forefront of teams you would expect to go deep into the playoffs. However, just like every time we've said that about these teams lately, the group stage were utter chaos. Aurora nearly got eliminated by Astralis on the final day, Team Liquid didn't look super dominant in their wins, 3D Max got eliminated, and Legacy barely got by on the final day. Let's not waste any more time so we can get through some playoff predictions as we get ready for the quarterfinals to begin tomorrow. If you guys enjoy this kind of content, you can show me by leaving a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Help me at 10k subs by the end of the year. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and thank today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by SkinsMonkey, a CS2 trading website. You put in the skins that you want to trade, you select what you want, you use my code LionHeartZ for up to $5 off, or click the top link in the description, and boom, new drip. Nice. You can also use my code for a 35% deposit bonus if you want to buy with real money. And they have a free section with cool giveaways. So check the top link in the description, use my code to buy 15 Dragon Lores to let them know I sent you their way, and thank you to SkinsMonkey for sponsoring this video. So with the aforementioned favorites having their struggles throughout the group stage, who were teams that exited 3-0? Well, surprisingly, first through without dropping a single map were Heroic, who have definitely been on an interesting trajectory since losing to Team Spirit a few months ago. The revolving door around who their new opera is, as well as a general lack of what Saw brought to the table as a coach with their new hire, have definitely left Heroic on the skids since the start of the season. So them going out how they did was genuinely impressive. They opened things up with a 2-0 victory over Ninjas in Pajamas, and then beat BetBoom in the second round 2-0, and then most surprisingly was them beating Aurora in the advancement game 2-0 as well. So once again, didn't drop a single map, and right at the helm of that success, having one of his best individual tournaments ever, was xFlout, who edges the group stage with by far and away the best overall rating at 1.46. Now flat out, that is ridiculous. 1.46 is basically donk numbers, so any rifler even getting close to that is going to be exceptional, and he was just putting up huge match after huge match right out of the gate. In this 2-0 victory against NIP, we opened up on Nuke, where xFlout would jump out with a casual 33-11 carry job that genuinely felt like it came out of nowhere. This CT side start from him was nothing short of fantastic, going 24-5 and shutting down NIP at pretty much every turn. NIP felt like they were woefully outgunned in the rifling matchups, with Nilo also doing great behind him. And frankly, xFlout just didn't slow down. As we move into Dust 2, Kaspersky is carrying NIP as hard as he can and made this game a lot closer, meaning that Heroic really had to work to get this 13-10 victory over the line. Just not in xFlout's case, as he went for 28-14 and a 1.82 rating. I will say throughout the other two wins, what really stood out more than just xFlout was the outside impact from Nilo and Alcaran. Alcaran's a bit of a blind spot for me. I don't really know what to rate him so far, but compared to Grix, it feels like he works much better in the system. Also, seeing Nilo actually frag out in a way that he's really been promised since he initially joined the roster was refreshing to see. Obviously, replacing Tenier is going to be a very tall task, but compared to previous outings we've covered on this channel, I felt like I noticed his impact the most when I went back and rewatched these games. Their second round series versus BetBoom proved to be a little more difficult. Despite being another 2-0, BetBoom never really felt like they were outclassed, and this map could have easily gone 3 maps or a 2-0 in favor of them as well, in my opinion. Despite the dominant start on the first day, this was xFlout's weakest series at the group stage. It was Youngster who had to step up on both maps and be the hero to lead this team forward. En route to the 13-8 win on Nuke, it would be Youngster who goes for almost a 30 bomb, going for 27-11, and then surprisingly the next highest killer being LNZ, putting up a rare good scoreline of 18 kills, 12 deaths, and a 1.16 rating. Unfortunately, this was kind of a classic BetBoom loss, where despite Boomich really doing a lot to facilitate and get rounds going, he didn't have the backup firepower from his rifles to help convert rounds. MagnoJez and Dilladez really didn't show up in this first map, and it left really Art Frost as the lone player to try and back his IGL up. Mirage would prove a lot closer, having to go all 24 rounds before Heroic could take the victory. Along the way, this was definitely Alcaran's strongest showing of the group stage, where he looked very mobile and very fluid with the AWP on the T side and kept up the impact in the second half. His AWP style to me is pretty interesting, as he doesn't really have like a recognizable pace. He doesn't seem overly aggressive like a Munisi, but he's not too passive like a Shiro. He's taking an okay amount of opening attempts and he's pretty successful at them, but he's not someone who's going to overextend and put that AWP at risk. which is definitely a good spot to be if you're going to be a new opera in Tier 1, as it just doesn't have the same inherent volatility as, say, an Ultimates playstyle does. So I'll definitely be curious to see how he holds up to playoff pressure. And finally, their advancement game versus Aurora proved to be the most shocking win of them all. Aurora should be beating this team straight up almost every time. However, as we've covered recently on the channel, Major really needs to lose his job at some point, because I hate watching this team play. This is my least favorite team to watch for these videos right now, other than Verse Pro. Anyways, Heroic stomped them out on the opening map of Mirage 13-4, and this wasn't even a T-side shit show, this was a CT side one, as Aurora couldn't defend shit, letting Heroic storm out to a 9-3 first half lead, which they closed out not long after. Alcaran once again put up a great performance with Nilo right behind him. On Inferno, we went the full 24 rounds, but Heroic got the victory in the end with some clutch T-side play. This time it was xCloud putting up one last great performance to cap off his group stage, and Aurora, they did relatively well here. They got through their first half T-side about as well as you'd expect, only getting 4 rounds, but the CT side was very dominant, with Heroic really struggling to get into the bomb sites throughout the middle of the half. Moving on, our other surprising 3-0 team were Pain Gaming, who they've been on just such a weird skid for what feels like an entire year now, that it's genuinely surprising to see them turn around and play some good Counter-Strike. It felt like this was the most coherent, structured play we've seen from them, maybe since like the Major? They started off by 2-0ing Gentlemates, but that series was an absolute slog. It went double overtime on Ancient, Mirage went deep as well, so Pain really had to work for that opening win. They faced off against GamerLegion and beat them in 3 maps, with 2 of them being very competitive and then only Overpass being a real wash in the middle. And then they ended it with their best series of the group stage, beating Vegt straight up 2-0, with Bubblesj leading the way as the top fragger for the series, which is probably the best place to start, as this was a real resurgence of an event for Bubblesj overall. He's just had such a rough 2025, with this group stage being his first positive rating since Blast fucking Bounty. Circling back to that Gentlemate series, they start off on Ancient, which went 2 overtimes deep before Pain walked away with a 1-0 lead, 19-15, with Bubblesj and Devvrat leading from the front. And they really had to grind to get this opening map over the line, as Gentlemates won both pistol rounds and dominated the early game, holding Pain to just 1 round win through the first 5 rounds of both halves. So Pain had to do bulk of their work on full buys, taking out Gentlemates at full strength and trying to break their economy. They kept up that strong play onto Mirage, winning their 13-10, with DGT stepping up alongside Bubblesj to get the job done this time. Their second round matchup against GamerLegion proved to be a little bit more difficult, as GamerLegion win the first map pretty confidently on Nuke 13-10. Despite this being a loss for Pain, it did show some really interesting changes. As pointed out by friend of the channel Dust over on Twitter, Pain has completely changed up Snow's roles at Bucharest. Most notably, he went from playing on a site to now being the dedicated outside rifler. It seems like Pain wants to put Snow in more proactive situations and get him more aggressive compared to where he was previously, and overall that worked great in this series and on this map even though they lost. He was their top performer on both sides and handled the outside responsibilities very well. Now Overpass was an absolute no contest, as GamerLegion's T-side would hit a brick fucking wall, going down 11-1 in the first half. Not much more to be commented on here. Pain simply won every goddamn gunfight. And then Dust 2 was just straight up an embarrassing loss for GamerLegion, as they went for a 10-2 first half of their own on the CT side, only to put up a literal bagel. 0 T-side rounds won, allowing Pain to win the game and the series 13-10. Snow was awful on the first half, 1 for 7 in openers, 4 for 12 overall, and he flips the script entirely on the CT side, being Pain's best player, going 13-4 with 2.19 rating. It was just an ugly second half from GamerLegion. It felt cursed. I felt bad for Ash in the background because he was doing everything he could to give them strats, and just nothing worked, and Pain took full advantage of it. In the 2-0 advancement game, they took out Vegt 2-0. It was 13-8 on Dust 2, 13-10 on Mirage. Once again, a lot of the praise has to go to Snow, as the other part of that Dust tweet also talks about his aggression on the T side, and his entry rate is up, his success rate is up, and that has made him more dynamic on these T-sides, where previously that felt like the worst aspect of his game. He'd be alright on his CT side anchor responsibilities, but on the T-sides, Bubblesj, Devvrat, DGT were just higher in the pecking order, so he felt very deprioritized. And at least thus far, this newfound space seems to have reinvigorated his confidence, and maybe Pain can turn the corner just before the Major. Moving on to our 3-1 teams, we're going to start with Team Liquid, who really should be threatening to be the best team in this format alongside Aurora, at least on name brand alone, but so far Elise return to the lineup hasn't worked as well as you would expect. They did okay here, but none of these games were super clean in a way that would inspire confidence going into a playoff run. They opened up with a 2-1 victory over Legacy. They then lost to Aurora in a 3-map set. They then went all 3 maps against BetBoom, and that series is very hard to clock because all 3 maps were blowouts. It wasn't until we got to this final series against FlyQuest that Liquid could find a 2-0 victory, but even then, you had to go overtime on Mirage, and Train was about as close as you could like. Talking broadly about Liquid, by far the biggest issue has been that Elise has been very slow starting in just about every map that he plays, and there's just gotta be a limit on how many times Liquid could get away with that. Nerds definitely stepped up in a big way, having a team best 1.21 rating, and Nav and Ultimate stayed consistently above par, which really helped to hide Elise's struggles. Now, the one thing really going for Team Liquid is that they have SAW as their opening quarterfinal opponents, and that's the easiest draw in this field, though again, SAW actually played pretty good as we're about to talk about, and it's Team Liquid, so when I say it should be easy, it's Team fucking Liquid, literally anything can happen. Our next 3-1 team to make it through were Bait, who pretty much played exactly how well I expected. They 2-0'd Astralis, they 2-0'd 3D Max, they got thumped by Pain, but Pain were playing pretty great, and then they qualified in their next available game against Legacy, who are like my sleeper pick to make a deep run here, so that's a pretty good vote of confidence in my book. In that opening series against Astralis, they made the first map really close, with Magisk rolling back the years and putting up 27 kills next to Stairs 21, taking Bait into overtime before Bait could leverage out the win 16-12. Alex put up a devilish 35-19 performance with a 1.89 rating. MPL also looked great behind him with 26 of his own. And lucky for them, Astralis only had enough fight in them for one map, as Ancient was an utter wash 13-4. Magisk remembered that he is still in fact washed, fell back to earth with a 4-13 performance, with Device as the lone Astralis player who looks somewhat competitive. Meanwhile, everyone other than Essential really fed on Bait's side. Essential made up for it by top fragging against 3D Max, helping them win 13-11 on Ancient and then 13-9 on Inferno. I don't really have much else to say about this series. This is the one I ended up with the least notes for. It was one of the more forgettable ones that I watched for the entire group stage, if I'm being honest. 3D Max just weren't really able to keep up and had pretty poor T-sides. Bait dropped the 2-0 game to Pain, as we previously covered, and then in the next day they beat Legacy to qualify 2-1. This was an interesting series because Legacy ran out the gate with a dominant Dust 2 win 13-3 that left Bait feeling very flat, and going into Ancient, which is another map where Legacy liked to get very aggressive and really push it down, it felt like the series might be over before it even starts, but Bait bounced back with a great win there 13-10, and then finished off the series with a 13-11 win on Train. Probably the most commendable thing about watching Bait play is that they're really a win by committee team. It's different players stepping up damn near every time. Some maps it's Alex top fragging, some maps it's Essential, sometimes it's Head Trick, MPL gets in there as well. They're kind of like a mini Mongols in the sense that you really don't know where the star impact's going to come from because of the firepower being spread so evenly. Now, looking ahead to the playoffs, they have Aurora in their quarterfinal matchups tomorrow, and I think that should be heavily in their favor. Aurora, as we're going to talk about towards the end of this video, looks so up and down as per usual. I have zero faith in their T-sides in big playoff environments, and outside of individual carry modes from Woxic, Wicadia, or Zontares, Bait are just going to have such a huge advantage in terms of raw consistency. It feels like they should be threatening to 2-0 Aurora, which is crazy because Aurora should again be threatening to win this whole fucking event. Anyways, moving on to the most shocking team to make the playoffs here, it's SAW. And I really am shocked by this result because SAW kind of cruised. They only lost their opening series to 3D Max, but they beat Ninjas in Pajamas afterwards, they beat GamerLegion, which is super surprising, and then the most shocking win was beating Aurora, and considering that Mutirias has often been criticized for a lot of the same things as Major, that really is genuinely shocking. Anyways, they got 0-2 by 3D Max, the series was an utter wash. It was 13-5 on Ancient, 13-8 on Nuke. We're not even going to touch on that. We're just going to move on to the wins. They took down NIP, but that series went all 3 maps. NIP played fucking awful at this event, and I'm really mad about it. I'll save more for that commentary at the end. But here, SAW jumped out with a 13-5 win of their own on Ancient. They then lost a very close game on Nuke 13-10, but bounced back with an overtime win on Train 16-14 to close out the series. Back up on Ancient, and we're starting to see some impact from new faces. This is my first time seeing both Crazy and Aragorn play, and frankly I was really impressed by their rifling impact. Both of them top fragged on this first map with 21 kills apiece, and they really feel like they've stepped into the slots left behind by Udrix and Arados pretty nicely. Unfortunately on Nuke, Crazy could not keep up the effort as he went 7-20 for the whole game, which is an utter disaster. Meanwhile, Story tried his best to keep things afloat, but his 21-14 effort ultimately fell short. With the lack of rifling punch, their T-side looked absolutely wretched, as they only managed to get 3 rounds over the line. Things looked much better on Train, with Saw managing to go up to an 11-6 lead, but they almost pissed it away as NIP stonewalled their T-side with a 6-round run at the end there. It nearly cost them the series, but Saw managed to force overtime on the very last round of play and finish off the series 16-14 in overtime. And it wouldn't get easier from there, as the next day they had to play GamerLegion, and this series was the epitome of a fucking slog. We started off with a 13-6 victory for GamerLegion on Nuke, and then Inferno went double overtime before Saw could walk away with a 19-17 win, and then Ancient went into 1 overtime before Saw could close out the series 16-14. And this was the series where I really started paying attention. Aragorn looked damn good. He was the best player in the server. He had 69 kills. Nice. And a 1.41 rating. He just looked very comfortable taking all of these opening fights, and considering he goes 11 for 11 across the series, a 50% success rate against players like PR, Rez, and Towson is definitely really good. And then probably the shock result of the event was them beating Aurora 2-1 to advance to the playoffs to begin with. Aurora should win this series every fucking time. I'm not kidding. It's actually such a joke that this team lost to Saw on paper. But credit to Saw, as they really outplayed them in the back half of the series. They lost Nuke in a close game 13-10, and then Inferno went into overtime before Saw could keep their series alive 16-13, and then they closed out dominantly on Train with yet again another dogshit Aurora T-side to close out an important series, as they only won 1 round in that second half, losing 13-9. And it was just damn satisfying to watch Bucharest author this reverse sweep, as despite Bucharest also being old and a bad fragger and probably worth replacing, compared to Major, it is a night and day difference in T-side approach. It's actually insane how much Bucharest was ahead of him on the calls throughout this series. I'm really curious to see this Saw team in the playoffs, because if Aragorn can keep up this production, with the other teams really having no data on this Saw matchup, they become great dark horses. The other teams aren't going to have the same amount of prep on them as they will on Team Liquid or Aurora, for example, and that makes them dangerous. And considering they're playing Team Liquid, who love to throw away winnable games, it really is possible for them to make a deep run. I am scared to death of them playing Team Liquid. And then for our final 3 teams, we're going to speed things up a little bit, especially when we get to Aurora. Legacy were our first team to qualify 3-2, and they definitely had an up and down performance. They lost their close matchups against Team Liquid and Bait, but they made up for it by beating the teams they were definitely better than in Gentlemates, Astralis, and FlyQuest. They started off their event with a 2-1 loss to Team Liquid, as we've already talked about. They bounced back with a 2-0 win against Gentlemates, where it was a dominant 13-5 win on Ancient, followed up with a close overtime affair on Inferno 16-13. They kept up the Jekyll and Hyde performance against Astralis, where the opening map of Inferno went to overtime before Legacy could squeak out the win 16-14, and then they ran Astralis over on Nuke 13-4. They lost a 3-map affair to Bait, as we already covered, and then qualified beating FlyQuest 2-0. This was by far their easiest match at the group stage, winning on Overpass 13-7, and then closing out on Dust 2 13-11. Considering how shaky Team Liquid and Aurora look, and with no 3D Max to really threaten them, I think Legacy are by far my favorites to win this tournament. With how Pain played in the group stage, they're definitely going to be no pushover, but I do favor Legacy in that matchup given recent form. With Snow having more of an emphasis in their system, is he going to hold up well under playoff pressure? And it's not a guarantee that Big Uzera keeps up his good individual performances. If those two elements fall off, then Legacy are definitely the better team. The bottom line for Legacy is they can beat every team in this field, and coming off the back of their win at CAC, they now have playoff experience to boot. I really think this team can go deep. I have much less confidence about our remaining 2 teams, GamerLegion and Aurora. GamerLegion, they're just a seesaw. I really can't predict them game to game. They have Rez, PR, and Towson, who all played great, and then Hypex and ZTR were just okay. They beat FlyQuest 2-0, they lost to Pain and Saw. They beat Fnatic 2-0, more justice for Cypher, get fucked Fnatic. They then cruise past Gentlemates 2-0. Their first round matchup in the playoffs are Heroic, who were the best team in the group stage, and given individual form, I would give the edge to Heroic. It just seems like GamerLegion are hard to bet on match to match, and I don't know what that's going to look like in a playoff format. And then Aurora. What needs to be said about Aurora? This team is so fucking tough to watch. I was having this discussion with Dust. They are absolutely one of the worst teams to watch right now in the game. It is miserable watching Major try and organize these T-sides. Aurora sink or swim based off individual firepower. Wakadia, Wazig, Zantara, sometimes Jota. They need to have monster games out of individuals to feel somewhat competitive. They beat Fnatic 2-0, but that should be a game you're winning every time. They beat Liquid 2-1, which was actually genuinely impressive, but an ugly loss to Heroic 0-2, an even uglier loss to Saw 1-2, and then on the final day, they got stomped on the opening map of Nuke against Astralis, and very nearly got eliminated by an Astralis team that didn't have Device because he had food poisoning. They were playing with Rugga and very nearly eliminated Aurora. And if they had done that, if Astralis had squeaked into the playoffs with no Device and beat Aurora, this entire video would be a 30-minute roast session of just Aurora. I wouldn't talk about any other results. I would be flaying this team alive. But luckily, they found their shit in time to win this series and squeak into the playoffs. You may be wondering why there's no background footage of that Astralis series. Well, I've been recording all damn day, and my OBS kept crashing, and I got to the point where I couldn't be fucking bothered. I absolutely hate watching this Aurora team, and I really hope Bait fucking thump them in the quarterfinals. Let's briefly touch on some of the notable teams who didn't make it out of the group stage. 3D Max, they just had a shit event. Their only win was against Saw in the opening round. Other than that, they lost every game they played. They didn't look particularly competent, the firepower was lacking, and the T-side cohesion was way down compared to their normal standards. It felt like just kind of a punt. They're still recovering from the CAC, and they have their eyes set on the upcoming major. I'm not that worried about them not doing well in this field, though with the strength of the competition, you would have expected a better run. NIP go out 0-3, and that was genuinely shocking. This was a field rife with upset potential, and I was hoping NIP could figure it out, but their recent run of form has been very sketchy. They are losing to a lot of tier 2 teams they've been dominating for the last 6 months, and suddenly their firepower looks very weak. Udrix and Rinko are having a terrible time. Kaspersky feels like the only man relevant with a rifle in his hands on this entire team. The calling has not looked nearly as good from Snappy. This team really went into peril out of nowhere after finally having their breakout moment and breaking into tier 1 and tier 1.5 events again. I really hope this is just a bad skid of form from NIP, as I really believe in this roster, but maybe they need more firepower in place of Udrix, maybe a better support piece in place of Shush. Wrinkle just needs to recover the form he's shown earlier this year. It's hard to say where NIP are back, but really this is an event they should have done some damage at, and I'm very disappointed with how they played at Bucharest. Anyways, that's going to be it. If you guys enjoyed this video, you can show me leaving a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Help me to 10k subs by the end of the year. Thank you to Skins Monkey for sponsoring this video. Check the top link in the description, go try on their website. It lets them know I sent you their way. Thank you to Skins Monkey. Thank you to my channel members, Justin, Jesse Furley, Milan Berta, Bubblesj, Dr. Cocktor, Patatas Kaftesi, PTR, B1 Games, Cody Foxworthy, Justin Vegt, I'm Flashbangs, Knowing Right, Rowdy, LBKcs, Snax Enjoyer, Crunchywire, Zero2CS, drudenae, Chron, Gano, Zyro, Devvrat Singh, Clyde Mead, and our newest member, AlexF. If you want to become a channel member, it's the #1 way to support me directly. For $5 a month, you can name the video just like this, as well as custom our community Discord. I'll see you guys soon in another video. Peace.